Do you ever wonder how old people were treated in the distant past? What kind of respect did they receive in times long before modern medicine and retirement homes? Back in the Middle Ages, from roughly 500 AD to 1500 AD, life was hard, but did that mean elders were forgotten? Prepare to step back in time and discover 8 ancient rituals and customs connected to elder care. Number 8. The garment of dignity. In the sprawling, often chaotic world of the Middle Ages, where life was lived in close quarters and survival often depended on collective effort, the concept of clothing went far beyond simple protection from the elements. For elders, a particular custom emerged in many communities across Europe, often observed with quiet reverence: the presentation and wearing of a special garment, known sometimes as the garment of dignity. This was not just any cloak or tunic. It was an item crafted with deliberate care, imbued with symbolic meaning, and intended to serve as a constant visible reminder of the elder's esteemed position within the family and the wider community. Accounts from various monastic chronicles and fragments of household records suggest this practice was widespread, albeit with regional variations in its execution. For instance, the Liber Vitae of Durham Cathedral, a register primarily of benefactors and their families from the 9th to 16th centuries, contains oblique references to special attire bestowed upon aging members of noble houses upon their retreat from active life. Similarly, the Cartulary of Fountains Abbey, detailing land transactions and customs in Yorkshire, hints at gifts of fine wool and linen given to elderly tenants, often earmarked for personal use. In their later years, the creation of a garment of dignity was a communal effort. It was not something a younger family member simply bought or quickly stitched together. Often, the finest wool from the flock, carefully spun and woven, was set aside for this purpose. Linen, soft and durable, might be chosen for inner layers or more delicate pieces. In wealthier households, imported silks or brocades might even be considered, though these were rare and highly prized. The spinning of the yarn might be undertaken by the daughters and granddaughters, their fingers working meticulously, each twist of the fiber thought to carry prayers for the elders' continued well-being and wisdom. The weaving was often a task for skilled hands, creating a fabric that was not only strong, but also comfortable, designed to provide warmth and solace. The garment itself could take many forms: a long flowing cloak that wrapped around the elder, offering protection from the chill of stone castles or drafty cottages; a specially tailored tunic, looser and softer than everyday wear, or even an intricately embroidered head covering. Signifying wisdom and experience, the color of the garment was also often chosen with care. Deep blues, signifying steadfastness and a connection to the heavens, were common. Earth tones, such as rich browns and muted greens, represented rootedness and a deep connection to the land and its cycles. When the garment was completed, its presentation was often a subdued but significant event. It might be given during a family gathering, a harvest festival, or on a saint's day particularly relevant to the elder. There were no loud celebrations, but rather a quiet assembly of family members, perhaps neighbors, who would gather to witness the symbolic act. The garment would be unfolded, its quality and the care in its making evident, and then gently placed upon the elder. It was not just about providing practical warmth. It was about enveloping the elder in a physical manifestation of the community's respect. The weight of the cloak, for example, was not merely its physical mass. It was the perceived weight of years of accumulated wisdom, of stories told, of guidance offered. The texture, often soft and comforting against the skin, was a constant reminder of the gentle hands that had prepared it and the tender care of the family. This garment of dignity was often worn during significant events: family feasts, religious services, storytelling evenings, or when the elder offered counsel. It set them apart, marking them as a source of invaluable knowledge and tradition. It was believed to protect them not only from the cold, but also from the perceived spiritual chill of loneliness or neglect. A specific example, though not a formalized ritual in the modern sense, is hinted at in the scattered records of the Hospitallers of St. John, which provided care for the sick and elderly in various parts of medieval Europe. Their internal guidelines, as pieced together from surviving fragments, sometimes mentioned the provision of cloaks of comfort or mantles of peace to their long-term residents, often crafted by the monastic community itself. These garments were often made of the finest materials available to the order, and were distinct from the simpler robes worn by other residents, symbolizing the special consideration given to those in their final years. The garment of dignity also served as a tangible link to the elders' past achievements and their current role as a living library of family and community history. Each thread could be seen as woven with memories of births and deaths, of good harvests and lean years, of joys and sorrows. When an elder sat by the fire, wrapped in their garment of dignity, they were not just an old person. They were a revered figure, a repository of experience. Younger generations were taught to look upon the garment with respect, understanding that it represented a lifetime of contribution and wisdom. It was believed that the very fabric absorbed the elder's wisdom, and sometimes upon the elder's passing, a small piece of the garment might be kept by a favored grandchild, not as a memento, but as a symbolic transfer of a fragment of that accumulated wisdom and an enduring connection to the lineage. In other cases, the garment might be buried with the elder, completing their life's journey in the same mantle of respect in which they had lived their later years. The creation and wearing of the garment of dignity stood as a powerful, silent declaration of value and honor, a deeply ingrained custom that spoke volumes about the place of elders in the complex social tapestry of the Middle Ages. Number 7. The Solstice Sowing. In the tapestry of medieval life, deeply intertwined with the rhythms of the earth and the changing seasons, agricultural practices were not merely about planting and harvesting. They were often imbued with a profound spiritual significance, reflecting a belief in the interconnectedness of all life and the blessings of the natural world. For elders, particularly those who had spent their lives working the land and understanding its subtle demands, there was a custom known as the Solstice Sowing. This was not a widespread, formally documented church ritual, but rather a deeply ingrained folk practice, passed down through generations in rural communities, primarily observed around the summer solstice. It was a time when the sun reached its highest point, signaling the peak of summer and the promise of abundant growth. The custom was rooted in the ancient belief that the wisdom and life force of the community's oldest members could be symbolically transferred to the earth, ensuring a bountiful harvest and the continued fertility of the land. References to such agricultural blessings involving elders appear in various agricultural treatises and almanacs from the period, such as The Husbandry of Walter of Henley from the late 13th century, which, while focusing on practical advice, occasionally touches upon the importance of traditional blessings for crop success. Similarly, fragments from village common law books, like those found in the archives of Wiltshire and Suffolk, dating from the 14th century, sometimes allude to community participation in rituals aimed at securing good yields. The preparation for the solstice sowing was meticulous. It began days before the solstice itself. A small, often secluded plot of land would be chosen within the communal fields, perhaps a small corner that had been particularly fertile in previous years or a newly prepared patch. The soil would be tilled with special care, often by the younger members of the community, ensuring it was soft and receptive. The seeds themselves were also chosen with great deliberation. These were not just any seeds from the common store. They were often the finest, most robust seeds from the previous year's harvest, preserved specifically for this purpose. They might be wheat, barley, oats, or a mix of grains depending on what was vital to the community's sustenance. These seeds were often kept in a special pouch or container, sometimes blessed by the local priest or by the elders themselves, to imbue them with perceived protective and life-giving qualities. On the day of the summer solstice, or sometimes on the evening before, the elder or a small group of the community's most respected elders would be led to the specially prepared plot. This journey was often quiet, a solemn procession from their homes to the fields, accompanied by family members and other villagers. The elder was often dressed in their most honored garment, perhaps even the garment of dignity described earlier, signifying their elevated status for this important task. There was no elaborate ceremony with grand speeches. Instead, the elder would take the chosen seeds into their hands, often rubbing them between their palms, a gesture believed to awaken the life force within the tiny kernels. They would then slowly, deliberately walk the length of the small plot, scattering the seeds with a gentle, rhythmic motion. This act of sowing was not merely physical. It was seen as a symbolic act of imparting their accumulated wisdom, their life experience, and their hopes for the community's future directly into the earth. It was believed that the elders' long life and their deep connection to the cycles of nature made them uniquely suited to perform this sacred link. As the elder sowed the seeds, family members and villagers watching would often offer silent prayers or softly intoned blessings for a bountiful harvest, for protection against blight and drought, and for the continued health of the elder themselves. The act of sowing was often followed by a small communal meal shared in the fields, a simple but significant gathering that reinforced the community's interdependence. The belief was that the elder, having witnessed countless cycles of planting and harvesting, held a unique understanding of the earth's needs and a powerful connection to its generative forces. Their participation in the solstice sowing was thought to guarantee a strong, healthy crop, ensuring the community's survival for the coming year. It was a ritual that honored the elders' past contributions while also recognizing their crucial role in securing the community's future. The elder, through this custom, became a living conduit between the generations and between humanity and the fertile earth. The small plot where the solstice sowing took place was often treated with special reverence throughout the growing season. It might be the first plot to be harvested, or its yield might be set aside for specific community needs, perhaps for baking the bread for the next winter's feasts. The elders' role in this custom also reaffirmed their economic value even when they could no longer participate in the strenuous labor of the fields. Their perceived spiritual connection to the land and their ability to ensure its fertility was seen as an invaluable contribution. This custom was not about magic in a theatrical sense. It was about acknowledging and celebrating the deep, intuitive knowledge that elders possessed. A knowledge accumulated over decades of observing the subtle shifts in weather, soil, and plant life. It was a tangible expression of the community's reliance on its elders for more than just historical memory. It was a reliance on their very being to ensure the prosperity of the entire group. The solstice sowing was a silent pact between generations, a custom that bound the old and the young to the land and to each other, securing a future through the wisdom of the past. Number 6. The storytelling circle. In an age long before printed books were common, before widespread literacy, and certainly before digital media knowledge and history were preserved and transmitted primarily through oral tradition. For medieval communities, particularly in the evenings, when the day's arduous labor was done and families gathered around the flickering hearth fire, the elder often took on the vital role of the living library, the keeper of lore, the weaver of tales. This was not a formal, structured ritual in the way a church service might be, but a deeply ingrained, almost sacred custom known as the storytelling circle. It was a practice that reinforced the elder's crucial role as the custodian of shared memory, history, and moral instruction. Various medieval literary sources and chronicles, while not explicitly detailing the circle as a ritual, often mention the importance of oral transmission of knowledge. For example, the Poetic Edda, a collection of Old Norse poems, and the Mabinogion, a collection of Welsh tales, were preserved for centuries through oral recitation before being written down, often attributed to the memory and eloquence of elders. Similarly, educational texts from the period, such as those by Alcuin of York in the 8th century, emphasize the value of memorization and recitation, skills often perfected by older individuals. The setting for the storytelling circle was usually humble: a communal hall, a large family kitchen, or even a simple cottage. The fire, often the only source of warmth and light after dusk, played a central role, its dancing flames casting long, shifting shadows that seemed to bring the tales to life. Around this fire, family members, sometimes neighbors, would gather. Younger children, restless after a day of play, would settle down, their eyes wide with anticipation. Adults, tired from their labors, would listen with a different kind of attentiveness, often hearing stories they knew but appreciated anew through the elders' recounting. The elder, often seated in a place of honor closest to the fire, would begin. Their voice, perhaps softened by age, would fill the quiet space, carrying listeners to distant lands, to forgotten battles, or to the struggles and triumphs of their ancestors. The content of these stories was vast and varied. They included epic tales of legendary heroes, chronicling the bravery and virtues of figures like King Arthur or Beowulf, often interwoven with local folklore and the history of their own lineage. There were stories of great deeds, acts of courage, and clever trickery. There were also practical narratives: how to identify certain plants, the best way to mend a broken tool, or the signs of changing weather, all lessons disguised as engaging narratives. Many tales carried moral lessons, teaching children about right and wrong, the consequences of foolish actions, or the rewards of perseverance and kindness. The elders' skill lay not just in remembering the stories, but in their delivery. The pauses, the inflections, the way they built suspense or evoked emotion. They were master performers, their voices a conduit to generations past. This custom served multiple crucial functions. Firstly, it was the primary means of education. Children learned about their culture, their history, and the values that shaped their community. Secondly, it fostered a sense of shared identity and belonging. Hearing stories of common ancestors or local legends created a powerful bond among listeners. It reminded them that they were part of something larger than themselves, a continuous thread of human experience. Thirdly, it ensured the elders' continued relevance and respect within the community. While their physical strength might have diminished, their mental acuity and vast repository of knowledge remained invaluable. They were the living libraries, the walking archives, and their wisdom was sought after, not just for entertainment, but for guidance and continuity. A specific, though less dramatic, instance might be found in the Book of Marjorie Kempe, a 15th century autobiographical account, where Marjorie frequently recounts the stories and sayings of her parents and other elders in her community, demonstrating how orally transmitted narrative shaped her worldview and provided comfort. The storytelling circle was not a one-way street. Younger members often asked questions, prompting the elder to elaborate, to share personal anecdotes, or to connect the ancient tales to contemporary events. This interaction was vital, as it allowed for the organic evolution of the stories, adapting them slightly to new contexts while preserving their core truths. The elder's memory was often extraordinary, honed by a lifetime of reliance on oral tradition. They could recall genealogies spanning generations, the precise details of local landmarks, or the specific rituals for various occasions. As the fire dwindled and the last story faded into the quiet of the night, a sense of peace and connection often settled over the gathering. The elder, having once again woven the threads of the past into the fabric of the present, had reaffirmed their indispensable role. The storytelling circle was a custom that truly celebrated the elder's mind and voice, ensuring that the legacy of generations continued to live on, whispered from lip to ear, keeping memory alive in a world without printed pages. It solidified their status as the heart of the community's collective consciousness. Number 5. The offering of the first fruits. The medieval world was fundamentally agrarian. Life revolved around the cycles of planting, growing, and harvesting. The success of the harvest determined survival through the harsh winter months, and therefore, every aspect of agricultural output was treated with profound significance, often imbued with spiritual and communal meaning. Amidst these deeply rooted customs, there was one particular practice that highlighted the revered status of the community's elders: the offering of the first fruits. This was not a universal codified ritual across all of Europe, but rather a widely observed custom, particularly in rural communities, where the very first bounty of the fields or gardens was specifically presented to the oldest members of the community. This was an act of profound respect, gratitude, and a symbolic affirmation of the elders' perceived connection to the land's fertility and the community's prosperity. Historical texts, such as monastic farm records or manorial court rolls from the 12th to 14th centuries, sometimes contain entries that indirectly refer to special allotments of harvested goods for the eldest and most esteemed, distinguishing these portions from common distribution. For example, some records from the estates of Ramsey Abbey in Huntingdonshire mention specific deliveries of grain or cheese to elderly tenants at the beginning of the harvest season, suggesting a formal recognition of their status. The timing of the offering of the first fruits was precise. It occurred as soon as the very first crops were ready for harvest. This might be the first sheaf of ripe wheat, the first basket of freshly picked berries, the first ripe vegetables from the kitchen garden, or the first young animal born in spring. The point was its newness, its freshness, its symbolic representation of the new cycle of life and sustenance. The act of gathering these first fruits was often carried out with a degree of quiet reverence. It was not a casual collection. It was a deliberate act of selecting the best, the most perfect examples of the nascent harvest. The individual chosen to gather these first offerings was often a younger family member, typically a child or grandchild, emphasizing the generational continuity and the teaching of respect from an early age. Once gathered, the first fruits were prepared simply, but carefully. They were cleaned, perhaps polished, and then presented in a clean basket or on a fresh cloth. The presentation itself was a moment of quiet ceremony. The younger person would approach the elder, who might be seated by the hearth or outside their dwelling, and present the basket with a bow or a respectful gesture. Words spoken were often brief. Perhaps as simple, "For you, elder, the first bounty of the season," or "May your wisdom continue to bless our fields." The elder, upon receiving the offering, would often touch or examine the items, acknowledging the gift with a nod or a gentle blessing. They might offer a prayer of thanks for the harvest, or a word of hope for the season's continued abundance. The act symbolized the community's acknowledgement that the elder, through their long life and experience, had contributed to the very possibility of this harvest, whether through their past labor, their knowledge of agricultural practices, or their perceived spiritual influence over the land's fertility. Firstly, it was a profound gesture of respect and gratitude. It acknowledged the elders' lifelong contributions to the family and community, particularly their role in teaching younger generations how to cultivate the land and manage resources. Secondly, it was believed to ensure continued prosperity. By honoring the elders with the first and best of the harvest, it was thought that the earth itself would be pleased, guaranteeing that the rest of the crop would also be plentiful and healthy. It was a form of protective magic, an appeal to unseen forces through the veneration of those who had lived longest. Thirdly, it served as a practical means of elder care, ensuring that the oldest members of the community, who might no longer be able to labor in the fields, were among the first to receive nourishment from the new season's bounty. It highlighted the community's commitment to providing for its elders, recognizing their continued value even when their physical capabilities diminished. A tangible example might be seen in the records of the Manor of Cuxham in Oxfordshire, where records from the 14th century indicate specific portions of newly threshed grain were designated for elderly dependents before the main distribution to other tenants. The offering of the first fruits also underscored the deep spiritual connection between the elders, the land, and the community's future. It was a tangible link between generations, with the young honoring the old, and the old in turn symbolically blessing the efforts of the young. It reinforced the idea that the elders' wisdom was as vital to the community's well-being as the strength of its younger workers. The sweetness of the first berries, the crispness of the first vegetables, the richness of the first grain, all these were enjoyed first by those who had lived longest and whose lives embodied the cycles of growth and renewal. This custom was a quiet but powerful statement about the interconnectedness of life, the sacredness of sustenance, and the enduring reverence for those who held the accumulated wisdom of the past, ensuring the bounty of the present and the hope for the future. It was a constant reminder that the health of the community began with the respect shown to its oldest members. Number 4. The Feast of Remembrance. In a time when life was often harsh and mortality a constant companion, the memory of those who had passed on held a special significance. For medieval communities, the lineage was not just a matter of inheritance. It was a spiritual and social backbone. Among the many customs that bound families and communities together, the Feast of Remembrance stood as a poignant and often annual tradition, specifically designed to honor and remember deceased elders. This was not a solemn, somber affair of mourning, but rather a celebration of a life well lived, a recognition of the elders' lasting impact, and a reaffirmation of the continuous connection between the living and the honored dead. While specific details vary by region and social standing, various historical records provide glimpses of such commemorative practices. For example, monastic obituary rolls, such as those from the Abbey of St. Gall in Switzerland, dating from the 9th to 15th centuries, meticulously listed deceased patrons and benefactors, often with notes indicating specific prayers or meals to be observed on their anniversaries. Similarly, medieval wills often stipulated bequests for anniversary masses or memorial meals, indicating a widespread desire for remembrance. The Feast of Remembrance was typically held on a significant date associated with the departed elder, the anniversary of their birth, their death, or perhaps a significant achievement in their life. The preparation for this feast was a communal undertaking. Family members would contribute food, often special dishes that the elder had particularly enjoyed during their lifetime. The best of the harvest choice cuts of meat, freshly baked bread, and perhaps even some rare spices or sweet treats would be prepared. The home, or sometimes a communal hall, would be cleaned and made ready. A place of honor would often be set for the elder, their chair perhaps left empty, or a symbolic object, a favorite tool, a special garment, or a family heirloom, placed where they would have sat. This was not a literal expectation of their presence, but a symbolic acknowledgement of their enduring spirit and their place in the family's heart. The feast itself was a gathering of family, close friends, and sometimes neighbors. Unlike a funeral, which was often marked by immediate grief, this was a time for sharing stories, for laughter, and for reinforcing the bonds that the elder had helped to forge. During the meal, individuals would often share anecdotes about the deceased elder, tales of their wisdom, their kindness, their funny habits, or their remarkable achievements. These stories served to keep the elder's memory alive, ensuring that their legacy continued to influence the younger generations. It was a form of oral history passed down around the dining table, connecting the present generation to their roots. Children, who might have only vague memories of the elder, would listen intently, learning about their ancestors and the values they embodied. It was believed that by speaking the elder's name and recounting their deeds, their spirit was honored and their influence continued to bless the living. Beyond the storytelling and the shared meal, the Feast of Remembrance often incorporated specific elements of continuity and legacy. A particular prayer might be offered, a candle lit in the elder's honor, or a simple offering of food or drink poured onto the earth outside as a symbolic gesture of communion. Sometimes the elders' cherished possessions might be displayed not for mourning, but as reminders of their life and the skills they possessed. For instance, a beautifully crafted tool might be shown, serving as a silent testament to the elders' craftsmanship and diligence. After the meal, the elders' wisdom and advice might be discussed, often leading to decisions about the family's future, as if the elders' guidance was still present. A good example, though not a feast, is the Black Book of Carmarthen, a 13th century Welsh manuscript, which contains eulogies and elegies for deceased kings and chieftains. While these were poems, their recitation at communal gatherings would have served a similar purpose to the Feast of Remembrance, keeping the memory and virtues of the departed alive for the benefit of the community. The Feast of Remembrance reinforced the crucial idea that old age was not an end, but a transition, and that even after physical death, the elders' influence and wisdom continued to shape the community. It was a powerful custom for collective memory, ensuring that valuable life lessons and family traditions were not lost. It also served as a comfort to those who mourned, transforming grief into an active process of remembrance and celebration. The feast was a visible demonstration that death did not sever the ties of respect and love, but rather transformed them. It was a continuous cycle of honoring the past to strengthen the present, a testament to the enduring presence of elders in the social and spiritual fabric of medieval life. The laughter and stories shared around the table, the warmth of the food and the sense of unity all spoke to a profound respect for those who had lived before, ensuring their legacy would not fade with time. Number 3. The Vigil of Passing. In the medieval world, death was an ever-present reality, touching every family and community with a frequency unimaginable today. Yet, amidst the challenges, there were deeply entrenched customs that surrounded the final moments of life, particularly for elders. One of the most profound and widely observed of these was the Vigil of Passing. This was not a solitary or clinical event, but a collective gathering of family, friends, and often neighbors who would assemble at the bedside of a dying elder to offer comfort, prayers, and silent companionship. It was a communal act of presence, a deeply human expression of solidarity that sought to ease the elder's transition and provide spiritual support. Accounts from various medieval texts, including monastic rules, medical treatises, and personal letters, frequently describe the practice of attending the dying. For example, The Art of Dying, Ars Moriendi, a series of popular texts from the 15th century, graphically illustrates the importance of family and spiritual figures being present at the deathbed to offer prayers and ward off temptations. Similarly, records from medieval hospitals and hospices like St. Bartholomew's in London or the Hôtel Dieu in Paris often mention that patients nearing death were never left alone, suggesting a widespread practice of communal vigil. The Vigil of Passing would begin when an elder's health significantly declined, and it became clear their life was drawing to a close. Word would spread through the village or neighborhood, and people would gradually gather. There was no specific summons. It was an unspoken duty, a deeply ingrained custom of mutual support. The dying elder would often be made as comfortable as possible, perhaps moved to a bed near the hearth or window, if able. The room, though humble, would be cleaned and prepared, often with a crucifix or a holy image placed prominently. The presence of the community was not about trying to prolong life through medical intervention, which was largely rudimentary, but about providing spiritual and emotional solace. It was believed that companionship at this critical juncture could strengthen the elder's spirit, making their passage more peaceful. During the vigil, The atmosphere was one of quiet solemnity, punctuated by soft murmurs and rhythmic prayers. Family members would take turns holding the elder's hand, gently wiping their brow, or offering sips of water. Younger children might be present, often quiet and awed by the gravity of the situation, observing the ritual of collective care. The main activity during the vigil was prayer. Loved ones would recite familiar prayers, often the Pater Noster, Our Father, or the Ave Maria, Hail Mary, repeating them softly. A local priest or a respected elder might lead these prayers, offering words of comfort and blessing. It was believed that these prayers helped to guide the elder's soul towards salvation and to ward off any perceived evil influences. Confession and receiving the last rites were also crucial components, often administered by a priest if available, ensuring the elder's spiritual readiness for death. Beyond the prayers, the vigil was also a time for quiet reflection and reconciliation. Family members who had unresolved issues might seek forgiveness or offer words of love and gratitude. Stories of the elder's life might be shared in hushed tones, reminding everyone of their contributions and the legacy they would leave behind. The purpose was to ensure that the elder felt loved, remembered, and not alone in their final moments. It was a powerful demonstration of the community's bonds and its commitment to caring for its members until the very end. The collective presence also provided comfort to the grieving family, making their loss less isolating. The shared experience of witnessing death together, surrounded by the warmth of human connection, was a fundamental aspect of coping with mortality in medieval times. For example, the customary of the Augustinian canons of Barnwell, 13th century, describes how the sick and dying were attended by their brethren with specific instructions for prayers and attendance, highlighting the communal nature of end-of-life care in monastic settings, which often mirrored lay practices. The vigil of passing concluded with the elder's last breath. Even then, the gathering would often remain, continuing with prayers and a period of silent contemplation. The immediate care of the body would follow, often performed by the family, preparing it for burial according to established customs. The vigil was a powerful reminder that while individual life was finite, the community endured. It ensured that the elder, who had often devoted their life to the well-being of the family and community, received their final care surrounded by love and spiritual support. It was a sacred custom, honoring the sanctity of life even as it drew to a close, and reinforcing the profound interdependence that defined medieval social existence. It was a quiet affirmation that no one, especially an elder who had served their time, would face the ultimate transition alone. Number 2. The elder's blessing before journeys. In the medieval world, travel was a perilous undertaking. Roads were often poorly maintained, bandits were a constant threat, and the whims of weather could turn a short journey into a deadly ordeal. Before embarking on any significant journey, whether for trade, pilgrimage, or simply visiting kin in another village, it was a deeply ingrained custom for individuals, and sometimes entire families, to seek a blessing from the community's oldest and most respected elders. It was not merely a polite formality, but a sincere plea for protection, good fortune, and safe passage, rooted in the widespread belief that elders possessed a unique spiritual authority and a profound connection to unseen forces. Various chronicles and hagiographies, lives of saints, from the period such as the Chronicle of Battle Abbey, 12th century, or the accounts of pilgrims like those traveling to Santiago de Compostela, often mention individuals seeking blessings. The custom would typically take place at the elder's dwelling, often just before dawn on the day of departure, or perhaps the evening before. The traveler, or group of travelers, would approach the elder with respect, bowing their head or kneeling. They would state their destination and the purpose of their journey, seeking the elder's benevolent wishes. The elder, often a matriarch or patriarch of a prominent family, or a revered figure in the community known for their wisdom and piety, would then perform the blessing. This was not a formal ecclesiastical ceremony like a priest's blessing, though it might be accompanied by religious invocation. Instead, it was an intimate, personal custom, often delivered with a gentle touch and heartfelt words. The blessing itself varied. It might involve the elder placing their hand upon the traveler's head, shoulder, or chest. They might make the sign of the cross over the individual, or simply gesture protectively. The words spoken were often a combination of prayers for safety, good weather, protection from harm, and success in the journey's purpose. "Go safely, child. May the road be clear before you, or may the winds be at your back and harm pass you by," were common sentiments. Sometimes the elder might offer a small token for the journey, such as a dried herb for good luck, a piece of blessed bread, or a simple charm, believed to provide additional protection. These were not seen as superstitions in the modern sense, but as tangible conduits for the elder's perceived spiritual power and good intentions. The significance of the elder's blessing was multifaceted. Firstly, it provided profound psychological comfort to the traveler. Knowing that they carried the good wishes and spiritual protection of a revered elder was believed to instill courage and alleviate fear in the face of uncertainty. It was believed that the elder's years of experience and their perceived closer proximity to the divine or natural order gave their words a special potency. Secondly, it reinforced the elders' continued importance in the community. Even if they could no longer physically contribute to arduous tasks, their spiritual and moral authority remained paramount. They were the anchors, the sources of stability and wisdom, whose blessings were sought for life's most significant transitions and challenges. Thirdly, it strengthened the bonds of family and community. The act of seeking and receiving the blessing was a public demonstration of respect and interdependence, reminding everyone that they were part of a larger, supportive network. A specific reference might be found in the Visio Tandali, Vision of Tundale, a 12th century Irish text that, while focused on the afterlife, sometimes recounts pilgrims or individuals seeking a spiritual guide's blessing before undertaking journeys, which could be an older, revered person in the community. The custom also served as a moment for the elder to impart final words of advice or caution, drawing upon their own lifetime of experiences and knowledge of the world. They might share insights about specific dangers along a particular route, or offer wisdom on dealing with strangers or navigating difficult situations. These were not just blessings. They were often encapsulated lessons. Upon returning from a successful journey, travelers would often visit the elder again, offering thanks and perhaps a small gift or a story from their travels, thus completing the cycle of respect and reinforcing the efficacy of the blessing. This custom was a tangible expression of the elder's enduring role as a protector and guide, a figure whose wisdom and spiritual strength were essential for the well-being of the community's members, especially when they ventured beyond its familiar confines. It was a powerful, comforting ritual that knitted generations together with threads of respect, tradition, and a shared belief in the wisdom of those who had walked the earth longest. Number 1. The blessing of the hearth fire. In the cold and challenging world of medieval Europe, the hearth was the absolute epicenter of every home. It was the source of warmth, the place where food was cooked, the focal point for family gatherings, and often the only source of light after dusk. More than just a practical necessity, the hearth carried profound symbolic meaning, representing the heart of the home, the continuity of the family line, and a connection to both the physical and spiritual well-being of its inhabitants. Amidst the daily routines, a deeply rooted custom existed, particularly for the community's oldest members: the blessing of the hearth fire. This was a quiet, almost meditative ritual, often performed daily or weekly by the elder, reaffirming their role as the spiritual guardian of the home and the keeper of its warmth and vitality. While not explicitly codified in religious texts, References to household blessings and the importance of the hearth appear in various historical sources, such as domestic conduct books like Le Ménager de Paris, The Goodman of Paris, late 14th century, which details household duties and the importance of maintaining the well-ordered blessed home. Similarly, fragments from local customary laws or family traditions sometimes mention the elder's role in daily household rituals. The custom of the blessing of the hearth fire usually took place in the early morning, just as the family was stirring, or in the evening as darkness fell and the family gathered for their meal. The elder, often the grandmother or grandfather, would approach the hearth. They might carry a small branch of a sacred tree, a sprig of a protective herb, or simply use their bare hands. There was no grand ceremony or elaborate incantations. Instead, the act was one of quiet devotion and focused intention. The elder might gently stir the embers, rekindling the fire to a brighter glow, or add fresh wood to ensure its strength. As they did so, they would often murmur soft words of blessing, not always audible to others but deeply felt within the family space. The words of the blessing were simple but potent, often invoking protection, prosperity, and peace for the household. May this fire warm our bodies and our spirits. May it keep evil from our door and hunger from our table. Or, may its light guide our steps and its warmth fill our hearts. The elder might sprinkle a few grains of salt into the flames, believed to purify and protect, or a small handful of herbs known for their protective qualities, such as rosemary or bay leaf. The smoke rising from the blessed fire was thought to carry these intentions throughout the dwelling, permeating every corner with positive energy and warding off ill fortune. It was believed that the elders' deep connection to the family, their wisdom, and their accumulated life force made their blessing particularly effective. Their long years had imbued them with a unique understanding of the unseen forces that influence daily life, making them the ideal conduit for securing the hearth's protective powers. The significance of the blessing of the hearth fire was profound on multiple levels. Firstly, it reinforced the elder's invaluable role as the spiritual guardian of the home. Even if they could no longer perform strenuous physical labor, their daily ritual ensured the perceived well-being and security of the entire family. They were the source of continuity, tying the present generation to the ancestors who had once warmed themselves at the same hearth. Secondly, the ritual brought a sense of peace and security to the household. In a world fraught with uncertainty, the daily blessing provided a comforting routine, a tangible reminder that efforts were being made to ensure the family's safety and prosperity. Children growing up, witnessing this custom, would learn the importance of tradition, respect for their elders, and the deep symbolic value of their home. Thirdly, it was a constant, subtle act of elder care in itself. By performing this vital function, the elder maintained a sense of purpose and importance, preventing feelings of irrelevance that might accompany a decline in physical capability. For instance, archaeological digs of medieval homesteads often uncover well-maintained hearths and evidence of continuous use over centuries, suggesting the enduring centrality of this space to family life, and likely to such daily customs. The very act of the elder tending the fire was seen as a living prayer, a continuous act of devotion for the family's health and happiness. The crackling flames and the warmth they provided became physical manifestations of the elder's love and wisdom. It was believed that a hearth regularly blessed by an elder would be a place of harmony, where disputes were softened and joy was amplified. This custom ensured that the elder remained indispensable, their wisdom and spiritual strength literally warming the core of the family's existence. The blessing of the hearth fire was a simple yet extraordinarily powerful testament to the enduring respect and reliance placed upon elders in the medieval household, a daily affirmation of their essential role in nurturing both the practical and spiritual heart of the home. It was a custom that bound the old and the young to the very foundations of their shared life, ensuring that the flame of tradition and family warmth never extinguished,